Welcome to Two Girls Treasure, y'all. So I went ahead Saturday before I left here and I painted 3 of them white just to get a good base coat on them. So I thought we would take some of our molds, some of our ornaments, and we would recreate them today. So let's start with some air-dry clay. So break out your clay and let's make some Christmas, y'all. Now, when you're running your clay in, you can absolutely use cornstarch if you feel like you need to. I have a tendency not to. It slows me down. Some of the smaller mold sets you may want to use when there's a lot of detail, like at the ends of this one. Pop it loose. Pop it loose from its edges. Use your fingers. Do whatever you have to do to manipulate the mold so that it works for you. And if you lose a tip when you demold, it's okay. Don't panic. Your crafting doesn't have to be perfect. Of course, it's always great when it turns out exactly like you intend, but you know what? Work with what you got. Work with what you get. See, look, we lost this little end right here. It's okay. I want to pop that out real carefully because when we glue this all together, that will be a natural. I'm going to get out my Alene's Tacky glue. Let's run some glue. That nice little thin glue line. I like to smooth my glue. When you smooth your glue, you've got a little bit better grip. You got a little bit better space for your mold to grip. And use them. Now, we'll lay this tip right there. We'll squish this piece in around that. And look, we have plenty of room for this. We'll just glue it on. So I'm just going to walk my fingers down the edge and make sure all of my edges are laying down. You see the gap right here? Just lay that in. Don't smush it. Don't smush because you'll lose some of your definition. Turn it over. You see the gaps right here? Just gently lay them back in. If you need to, get your tape out and lay a piece of tape over it. But now look at the difference. See, we went from this to this. There's our little crack right there, but you know what? It's okay. It rolls right back together. All right, but this IOD clay is really supple, very movable, great to work with. If I'm not casting resin, I am using IOD Air-Dry Clay. Leave it in the egg carton this time, and let me dab my glue on. Look, end to end, we're straight. It's all one piece this time. Now, here's what I'm doing. I don't want to lay it down because I'll smush my image on this side. So I don't want to lay it down flat. I want to lay it on the in-between. Now, this is where these egg cartons are hugely important, y'all. Hugely important. So I'll put it at a little bit of an angle. That way, the ornament is what's got pressure on it, not the molds, because we don't want to crush our pretty little molds. I love this ornament, y'all. Paint your molds while they're wet. The reason is, if you don't, your clay will dry out quickly, and it'll dry on the surface before it'll dry underneath. Once it dries on the surface, it cracks. And once it cracks, that's it. I've got a nice soft bristled, long handle, but soft bristled brush. And I like to make sure I hit those edges. And if you put a lot of paint over the clay, it's okay. We're using our Rethunk Junk Snowy Day, you know, because after all, it is Christmas. You don't want to brush too hard because you don't want to diminish your imaging, your detail work, because these are very beautiful, detailed molds. But once this paint dries, then it's time to decide how you want to age this. Or do you want it aged? Do you want it sparkly with glitter? We're going to let that one dry. I'm actually going to sit it up because the very bottom of the ornament has nothing on it, so it'll sit just fine. It'll dry just fine. So let's roll this in. Now this time I'm going to put the glue on the mold. And I want to make sure I've got enough glue on here. Brushes, it'll wash off. I'll wash my brushes when I'm done. Now, this distance is not going to be as great as this. So what we're going to do is we're going to cast about 3/4 again. We can cast the whole thing and we'll just run the edge against the end. So let's do that right quick. Let's put our bee on because we don't want our bee to dry out. There we go. And let's put our bee. Now, you got two choices here. Because of the design, you can ripple your bee to fit those textured edges, or you can lay your bee on there and take some DAP caulking and fill in those gaps. So I don't think I'm going to smush my bee on too hard, and I'll use some DAP to fill in those gaps. Now I'm going to demold this, and I want to show you before I glue it on. I'll measure how far around I need this to go. So I want the back end to go here and the front end to go here. Boy, it almost fits. We'll trim off just these because that'll allow that to set in where we want it. Find something thin and flat edged and just trim back into the mold what you need to trim off. Now I believe we have exactly enough to lay around there. So let's put the glue on. That end fits that part. And this end fits this part. If you have gaps later on, you can always use a little bit of DAP caulking. I have a little tube that I got, and it's perfect for my mold projects. And I think we have our laurel just about rounded around the same loop all the way around, just like that. I'll throw some paint on it right quick so that it doesn't dry out. Look at that, we've got our little bee, and I swear with these lines on here it looks like a honeybee nest, doesn't it? And throw back to the vintage days where we really did make what we gifted, And these are great for teachers and coworkers and friends and family.